This is Seth Schaefer from Team Just Cause Robotics, and today I'll be talking about all the changes and upgrades I've made to Division in preparation for next weekend's November 2020 Norwalk Havoc competition. Division has seen a lot of changes over the year and a half of its life. Between version 1 and 2.0, I didn't reuse almost anything of the physical structure of the robot. From version 2.0 to 2.8, which I'm at now, I've iterated on many other aspects of the design. Pretty much the only electronic remnant of 2.0 now is the weapon motor. If you want all the updates, you'll have to watch all of Division's prior event report videos, linked to a card above, where I report on every upgrade I've made before each of those events. However, this time I felt a separate video was necessary just to discuss some of the more subtle changes that I've made over the past week or two. First, let me go over everything I've changed since Motorama back in February 2020, the last time that Division fought. Number 1. Brushless Drive. I've already made a video series on this process. With my new custom brushless gearboxes, I was able to benefit from huge weight savings of brushless motors over brushed, and get beefier 6mm output shafts for my wheels to be much better supported. All in all, Division is more than 4 ounces lighter than it was at Motorama. 2. Larger battery. I upgraded from 500 to 650 mAh 3S batteries in January, but with the extra weight, I managed to fit in an 850 mAh battery this time. I also tried testing with a 4S 650 mAh of near identical size and weight, but while the bot was a bit faster, it was also harder to control, and I don't really like the idea of being so close to the voltage limit on the drive. I'd rather have better battery life. Number 3. Upgraded weapon ESCs. I used to use Flycolor 50A BL Heli 32 ESCs, which proved to never die on me in fights through almost every match with Division V2. However, there were a couple times, notably at Motorama and Franklin Institute, that I found I couldn't self-light reliably, not because the ESCs were actually dying, but because they were getting so hot that the solder was melting off of the motor phase wires. I decided that I needed more thermal overhead, and most importantly, current limiting, so I got these 80A beasts, which have a current sensor in them that you can configure to set whatever limit you want. Number 4. Updated drive ESCs and BL Heli 32 tuning. I had been testing Brushless Drive with the cheapest BL Helis I could find, but they were giving me some issues. They seemed to be kind of buggy and almost even laggy on the controllers. I also had weird issues with the weapon and drive ESCs due to improper programming at first, which I'll get into later. At number 5. ESC Programming. Using the correct settings makes a huge difference to performance. And last, number 6. 3D printable upgrades, namely more rigid, thicker forks that prevent face planting on spin-up, toothed pulleys for the weapon, printed weapon spacers, and printed wire guards to prevent wires getting caught in the weapon. I'll be touching on these in order as they get increasingly into the reeds and also increasingly away from things that are generally helpful to other Beetleweight builders rather than being really specific to Division itself. However, I think that if you were to watch the whole video, you'd get a better idea of the analytical approach that I have to all of my testing and preparation before these events, and how exactly I go about diagnosing issues and solving them one at a time. Let's start off with number 1, Brushless Drive. While the motors and gear train and gearbox have been performing amazingly, and have survived well over an hour of aggressive driving without the weapon on around my apartment, they were kind of fiddly to drive with the older ESCs. The ESCs were sometimes unresponsive feeling, and it was almost like playing a high latency online video game rather than a near instant direct radio transmission. More pressingly, they had an issue with browning out and restarting if I was drawing too much current, like spinning in place for more than a few seconds, and I never want to have that happen during a fight. That said, now that those issues are fixed, the weight savings more than justify the added ESC troubles. Even with the larger battery, the bot is severely underweight, opening new possibilities for base plates, front armor configurations, and more in the future. Larger battery. After that 4-minute encore fight with Wheels Are Tasty back in January, I knew that a bigger battery should be a priority. One thing that weight definitely is being spent on is this, an 850 mAh Tattoo 3S LiPo, adding 30% to the battery capacity of my robot, and better current delivery as an added bonus. From my testing so far, the bot easily spins the heavier asymmetric weapon at full speed now for about 2 minutes, and was able to push well over 4 minutes at 50% speed, even after self-righting at the start of that test. Against Wheels Are Tasty, the weapon probably averaged 20 to 30% throughout the last half of the fight, and it completely died at the end, so this is a huge improvement. Weapon ESCs. The main reason for this upgrade, like I said, was to try and prevent the solder joints from melting. I settled on these 80A iFlight ESCs. Not only are these much physically larger and have bigger pads, but they come with a capacitor to better handle current spikes and electrical noise, and they allow for current sensing and a few other features that are missing on the cheaper ESCs. They're about $40 each, which is only about $10 more than the 50 amp ones I'd been using before. In order to have the best possible low resistance electrical connection between the ESC and the motor, I cut little lengths of 16 gauge wire, stripped those completely, and used them to bridge the tiny gap immediately from the bullet connectors to the ESC's motor phase pads. With the correct settings, these seem to be far more reliable, although I definitely had issues at first. Which brings me to ESC programming. Originally, the drive felt as bad or worse than the older ESCs did, with quite a bit of lag on the controls even in open air, getting worse inside the test box. The weapon seemed hesitant at times as well. It would work at first, but once the weapon reversed a couple times or the battery drained a bit, it would stop spinning up to full speed or at all. I even had issues where the weapon motor refused to shut off at 0 throttle or even failed to failsafe, which is really concerning. I think all of these problems stemmed from a misunderstanding I had about both the motor timing and the ramp-up settings in BL Heli. I had assumed that there's no downside to maxing out the ramp-up power. After all, you always want full power at startup, right? Well, keep in mind that the setting here is a percentage. Anything from 3% to 150% is valid. And more importantly, a percent of what exactly? Like, what is 100%? Can the ESC actually deliver more than that for any appreciable amount of time? What takes precedence on startup, the current limit in absolute units of amps, or the ramp-up power percentage? Let's take a look at some of these tests where I had the ramp-up power of the drive and weapon at 150% and both set to maximum acceleration. Now, the most important hint to what was going on was actually right in the official BL Heli 32 manual on the GitHub page of the official release. It's the first section under programming parameters. Ramp-up power can be set to relative values from 3% to 150%. This is the maximum power that is allowed when ramping up at low RPMs during startup. For low RPMs, the maximum power to the motor is limited in order to facilitate detection of low BEMF voltages. Ramp-up power also affects bidirectional operation, as the parameter is used to limit the power applied during direction reversal. During startup, the actual applied power depends on throttle input and can be lower than the maximum level set by the ramp-up power parameter, but the minimum level is a quarter of the maximum level. So there's two important things to note here. Number one, the ramp-up power percentage imposes a minimum as well as a maximum, and the minimum could disregard the throttle command altogether and send as much as 37.5% of power to the motor, even if the throttle is at just 1% if you had your ramp-up set at 150%. In other words, a quarter of 150 is 37.5, so if your throttle percentage is 1%, the minimum power being applied is still 37.5%. 2. When bidirectional is on, as in my case, the ramp-up power also determines how forcefully braking will activate upon switching directions. For a quadcopter with a 10-gram plastic propeller attached to the motor, this might be fine and dandy. However, with more than 250 grams of spinning AR500 death, that's another story. I have no idea what the ramp-up percentage is for ESCs without current limiting, but I suspect that for mine, where I do have a current limit set, it's probably based on the current limit, where 100% of a 50 amp limit would be 50 amps, and 150% of that 50 amp limit would be 75 amps. I tried various combinations like 100% 65 amps, 150% 40 amps with similarly disappointing results. Eventually I found that by limiting the acceleration to less than 10% per millisecond, setting the current limit to just 40 amps, and setting the ramp-up percentage to 130%, as well as having a more aggressive timing of 26 degrees, I was able to get it to reverse pretty reliably without completely freaking out, and also spin up very consistently, even towards the end of the battery's life. Once the battery is drained too far and it activates the low voltage cutoff, obviously this doesn't work anymore, but previously I had had the weapon dying on me when the battery was still at 3.8 volts per cell, which is more than 50% charged, which is pretty bad. Then for drive, I found that turning on 25% braking, setting timing to 25 degrees, ramp up to 80%, and setting low demag compensation made the responsiveness a ton better and prevented it from coasting a lot, which I had found undesirable. I limited the acceleration to 5% per millisecond, since this seemed pretty quick already and I was worried about huge current spikes with it set to the max. This made the drive much less jerky as well, and it was a lot easier to make adjustments at slower speeds too. I think having the drive on auto timing may have led to much of the inconsistency, but the other changes definitely still helped, besides just setting 25 degrees on that. Having made all of these changes, I still felt like the drive was a bit laggy in the test box, but that must be from radio interference, most likely due to the GoPro having its own Wi-Fi signal right next to the 2.4 GHz radio and the robot. On my apartment floor outside of the test box, it's extremely responsive. I started stress testing the system again by trying to self-right a bunch of times and reversing the weapon several times as well. I would never really do this in a fight while the robot is upright, but I want to be sure that I can still self-right towards the end of a match with the battery drained a little, since I know getting knocked down in the last minute or so could be a real concern. As long as there's time to get counted out, I need to be able to get back on my wheels. With the battery depleted to the point of the 3.1 volt per cell cutoff, it definitely can't self-right anymore, but if I have enough charge that the weapon's capable of reaching full speed, it seems to work just fine. I think if a fight lasted the full 3 minutes, I wouldn't run the weapon at full speed much of the time anyway, so I'd be conserving power till the last minute or so and definitely have enough to be able to right myself. Now, to be clear, I know I've probably just made BL Heli ESC programming sound like a dark art that few can understand, but really there's only a few things that affect how your bot will perform, and many of the settings you might want to play with are self-explanatory, like the acceleration, braking, and cutoff voltage or protection settings. I made a whole video about ESC tuning for my 12-pound robot Draconid, and the process was a lot easier with that bot, linked to a card above. On Draconid, the motors are spinning relatively little mass at a much smaller gear ratio, and the motor cans themselves were not negligible compared to the rest of the system, so it was a little bit easier to tune. I still definitely recommend Brushless Drive if you're willing to do the research and learn what you're doing beforehand, and spec your motors appropriately for the task. Faceplanting. Now, away from the complicated technical speak and down to something dead simple, physics. Division is a very unusual robot, and it isn't just because it's a vertical spinner that's missing 2 wheels. Having a weapon that's 2 or 3 times the height of most of the opponents I'm facing leads to some weird physics. So the issue with division is basically, it's the difference between spinning the weapon on the shaft of the weapon axle versus spinning the chassis about that same axis. So the weapon normally spins this way, right? With the flat of the tooth going from this perspective clockwise. So imagine now for a second that you had like a typical drum style robot, right? Where the axle's in front. The weapon's still spinning kind of like upwards, right? The tooth facing upwards, biting up into the enemy robot. So the weapon wants to spin in this perspective clockwise. But imagine if you got your vice grip, weapon lock, or whatever, you grab onto the weapon bar and you hold it so it cannot rotate. That, and then you try to spin up the weapon, right? So that imparts a torque on about this weapon axle, but instead of it moving the weapon, because you've made it so the weapon cannot go this way, it's going to move the entire chassis instead. And which way will the chassis go? It'll go this way, the same direction as if the weapon was turning, right? So basically the chassis turns the opposite way that the weapon would turn if it was able to freely spin. And you can see that that is essentially, from the weapon's perspective, the same as if it's traveling the way it normally does, spinning in this perspective clockwise. The chassis rotates counterclockwise about the weapon axle if the weapon cannot rotate clockwise. So what's happening with Division is essentially the same thing. Some portion of the torque that's trying to spin up this weapon and accelerate it is turning into a torque that wants to rotate the chassis about the center of mass, and it wants to rotate it this way. And this is exactly where you get the faceplant. And that torque will be acting as if it was about the center of mass, which is this marker here, which is only just above the chassis. And if I had more stuff in the internals of the robot, it would be even lower down, even further from this axis, making it an even bigger effective torque. So you end up basically having the robot have its chassis trying to be scooped out from underneath it into this orientation and face plant straight into the floor. This brings me to how exactly to address the issue. Printed upgrades and new forks. In the test box and during a couple of fights, it's clear to see that the front plastic forks I've been using are simply bending and allowing the bot to pivot forward into the floor. I have to be able to counter the long lever arm from the height of the weapon shaft with a longer lever arm out in front of the bot pushing down onto the floor. The thin forks simply aren't doing this at all because they bend right at the front of the robot. I needed some longer, more rigid forks in order to fix this, so that's exactly what I whipped up. The new forks stick out 2 inches beyond the base plate and a full 1/4 inch further than the old ones. They are 50% thicker, printed with 1.8mm thick sidewalls and high infill, so they're much stiffer as well. The end result is that the forks stay dead straight when I spin up, and immediately pegging the throttle to 100% won't faceplant the robot anymore. In addition to the game-changing new forks, I've printed a few other small upgrades, like better wire guards and new toothed weapon pulleys. Motor shafts strong enough to handle the force of instantly stopping the weapon motor. This meant a lot of belt tension was needed to self-right, but not too much or friction would be much higher, and that was not always easy to achieve. Months ago, I swapped to custom 4mm hardened steel shafts, but I was still using the smooth pulleys just out of concern for safety. Using a toothed pulley means no slip, which makes self-righting a lot easier and faster spin-up times. And I've had the weapon slam into the floor at full speed enough that I'm confident it won't cause problems during a fight. I could always run the belt a bit looser for less friction, which helps reduce strain on the motor further and improve spin-up times. All of these upgrades together make for a much more reliable and deadly Division. Check out some test footage. Outro. So, what can you expect next? BattleBots will have its Season 5 premiere airing 8 p.m. EST on Thursday, December 3rd. They've also already announced that Bloodsport will be fighting Scorpios in that very episode, and I'll definitely be offering my thoughts on how the fight went after the episode airs. I hope that in the next week or two, I'll also be able to put together a team introduction video for everyone on Team Bots and stuff, so stay tuned. That's all I have for you today. If you liked this video, hit like. If you have any questions, leave a comment. And if you want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thanks for watching!